Hello and welcome to Franchise Direct. My name is Lily Burrows and today I'm speaking with Stephen Thompson of Darwin Solicitors. Hi Stephen, how are you?
Very well, thanks yourself.
Tell us about your practice.
Darwin is a commercial law firm based in Cardiff. We have 7 partners. We are involved in most areas of law that would be relevant to businesses, and one of those is franchising.
Can you tell me the basic steps I'd need to take when considering becoming a franchisee?
From a legal perspective, you would at some point, after having initial consultations with the franchisor, you would be given a franchise agreement. That's normally a fairly lengthy document, quite often running to 40 or 50 pages. And generally the franchisor will advise the prospective franchisee to get legal advice on that document.
Are deposits always required?
Not always, quite often, and the terms of the deposit will depend on the type of franchise and the individual situation, but normally some money is required up front as a sort of a gesture of goodwill.
If my franchise doesn't have its trademark registered, what does that mean?
Well, what that means is that the trademark is much more at risk than it would be if it was registered. A lot of franchising is about branding, and quite often the brand is central, or certainly one of the central aspects to the franchise. So clearly the franchisor should be wanting to protect that as much as possible, and the most they can protect it is by registering it. So that if they haven't registered it, you've got to ask yourself why, and you need to be concerned as a franchisee who is investing their future in that business and in that trademark as to why that's not been done.
How can I verify that the trademark is registered?
You would normally expect to see in the franchise agreement, in the what's called the recitals, which is the bit at the beginning, which sets out a bit of the background, the fact that the trademark has been registered, and it should give you the number of the registration. If it isn't there, you can ask the franchisor for details of the registration, and you can go online and you can check through what used to be called the Patent Office for the registration details, so you can see for yourself live time on the internet whether that trademark's been registered, or if it's not been registered, whether it's in the process of being registered, because it doesn't happen overnight. There's a process that it goes through which takes a little bit of time.
What is the normal duration of a franchise agreement?
Well, normal can mean anything really. I think there's normal in certain industry sectors. Some of the well-known fast food chains and that kind of thing tend to have quite lengthy franchise agreements, maybe 20 to 25 years, sometimes with early break provisions. Quite often franchises, the middle of the road ones, will be sort of 3 to 5 years, that kind of thing. Some of them are shorter, some of the more lifestyle franchises, the smaller ones, might be a year or 2 years. But in my experience, the average length is around 3 to 5 years.
Are there usually any performance clauses included in it?
Generally, yes. At the very least, there is normally a clause which will say you'll use your best endeavours to promote the franchise. Many franchise agreements have more detailed clauses in them. They'll have more detailed clauses in terms of what the franchisor wants you to achieve, whether it's levels of turnover or number of vans on the road or something like that. But quite often, they won't necessarily use them as a stick to beat you with. It's more of a marker, and hopefully if you have problems, they'll work with you to increase your turnover or profitability.
What would happen if I didn't meet my performance target?
It depends to some extent on the franchisor. If you have a franchisor that's helpful and positive, what they will do if they want you to succeed is they will work with you to find out why you're not performing and get your performance levels up.
Can you explain what an exclusive territory is?
An exclusive territory is normally a part of the country in which you're trading, in which you have notionally got exclusive rights to trade. Normally the franchise agreement will say that you are entitled to trade actively within your territory, but that you're not supposed to trade actively from outside of your territory. So the idea is that within your franchise business, you shouldn't be facing competition from your fellow franchisees.
What would happen if I want to sell my franchise unit?
Generally, franchises are saleable, and again, the franchise agreement will set out in detail the basis of the sale. There'll be generally a very lengthy clause which will have lots of provisions in there, and again, more hoops for you to jump through. But generally, franchises are saleable, subject to whatever's in the agreement.
What would be my recourse if the franchisor wasn't meeting their end of the contract?
Really, it's to go and seek legal advice, and ultimately it may be a situation where if the breach by them is sufficiently bad, then you would need to be looking at potentially terminating the franchise agreement because of their breach, and maybe even suing them for damages.
What are the most common issues between franchisees and franchisors that problems can arise from?
From the franchisee's perspective, in my experience, the kind of complaints that I hear are things like they're not getting the support from the franchisor that they expected. They went to see them at an exhibition stand, they went for an interview, they visited their business premises, and they were promised all of these things, and the franchisor just isn't delivering.
What are my rights as a franchisee?
You have certain rights which will be enshrined in law, whether it's common law or whether it's statute law. The franchise agreement is really the primary legal document which sets out the legal position between the franchisee and the franchisor. So if you have an issue as a franchisee, the first thing you need to be looking at, or your lawyer needs to be looking at, is the franchise agreement. It may well be that there are other issues that come to it from case law or statute law, but that really is your starting point as far as any legal disputes concerned.
What would be your most important piece of advice you could give to someone looking to start a franchise?
The key thing is research. It really can't be stressed enough that you need to do as much research as you possibly can in relation to any business that you're proposing to buy into. It's very easy to go to the exhibitions and get swept away with the emotion of it all and the excitement of it all. And naturally, if people are going to invest money in something, they need to get enthusiastic about doing so. But you really have to try and stay as objective as possible. You really have to get, I would say, other people involved in your decision-making process who aren't really part of it, just to give you some cold, hard facts, really, and talk it through with them.
Thanks for speaking to us today, Stephen.
It's been a pleasure.
If you're considering becoming a franchisee, remember it's essential to consult a solicitor before signing any franchise agreement. Thanks for visiting Franchise Direct.